Is it a good thing to say that's a good question after someone asks you a question? Well, let's find out. Hello there, welcome to Work Tips Pro. This is where we help professionals like you stand out among their peers. My name is Mukhtar. The other day, I was preparing food for my kids and I decided to listen to a podcast. This podcast was an interview. It was basically the host interviewing two economists. And the host went on to ask a question. And one of the economists responded by saying, "That's a good question," and then went on to answer the question. The host then asked another question. And the same economist responded by saying, "That's a good question" again, and then went on to answer the question. And then I felt a bit off. And then I thought, how do people take it when you say that's a good question before responding to their question? Because this is something that I do. And then I decided to do some research. And what I found were several articles saying not to begin your responses with "that's a good question." There's even a Freakonomics podcast episode dedicated to this topic. Now let's look at why we say it. Why do we say that's a good question before responding to a question? The first is that many of us use it to buy time. It gives us time to formulate a response to the question. The second is that it's just a habit. The third is that some of us use it because we think it flatters the questioner. And the fourth, according to the Freakonomics podcast, is that it is used as a bridge, which is basically a device that you use to acknowledge the question and then go on to answer the question you want to answer, not the question of the questioner. Now let's go on to talk about what's not so great about saying "that's a good question." The first is that now you're rating questions. So picture this, you've just finished doing a presentation and you're fielding questions. So somebody asks a question, you say, "Wow, that's a good question." Another person asks a question and then you don't say "that's a good question." Now, in your audience minds, they might assume that the second question was not such a good question. So does this mean that you're now going to say "that's a good question" for every question? Then you're going to come across as being inauthentic. Because what if you say it for a question that's not such a good question, but a mediocre question? And the last reason is that it is a cliche. So now what can you do instead? The first tip is to try an alternative to the cliche. Janet Vassell suggests a few alternatives in her article, such as, "I haven't looked at it that way before. That's something I haven't given much thought to. I will have to think about that for a moment." The other thing that you can do is to just pause. Take a few moments to collect your thoughts and then respond. A pause usually sounds a lot longer to the speaker as opposed to the listener. The next thing that you can do is to try paraphrasing or rephrasing the question. Doing this allows you to acknowledge the questioner and it also gives you time to formulate a response. And the last thing you can do, if you don't know the answer to the question being asked, just say something like, "I will have to get back to you on that." If you want some really good tips on how to make your next presentation stand out, make sure you click on the playlist link to the left of this video if you're watching this on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. See you in the next video.